Ladies and gentlemen, if you could please take your seats. Discipline is a very important element of democracy, and we do not want a moderator to become a dictator. So if you could please take your seats. We have some very important speakers on some absolutely crucial. My goodness, the men in uniform, one would have expected they would be the first to take an order. Ladies and gentlemen, if I could please ask for silence as a measure of respect for our next guests. Journalists love being able to tell people what to do, especially important people. My name is Lise Doucette. I'm the Chief International Correspondent of the BBC. And here we are yet again. It's Sunday morning in Munich, and it is the morning to discuss the Middle East. The French have an expression, plus ça change, plus c'est la même. The more it changes, the more it remains the same. There is a new man in the White House, President Donald Trump. There's a new man in New York, Antonio Guterres. And there are new facts on the ground in the Middle East. But there are still the old conflicts, and there are still the very old and the rising tensions. As Chairman Issenger said in his opening video, we need clarity. We need clarity on what President Trump plans to do and what not to do. Even more, we need clarity on what the leaders of the region plan to do. And we got a very good sense of that in these opening sessions. His Excellency Jawad Zarif called for a regional dialogue. There's plenty of blame to go around, he says. And what he didn't say was that everyone is blaming Iran. And we saw that very graphically in the last session, with Senator Graham saying, now it is time for Congress to take on Iran. Senators Murphy and Shaheen saying, it is not time for Congress to get involved in proxy wars. Ladies and gentlemen, what time is it? We are very honored to have three speakers to join us this morning, one after the other, and they will speak separately. That, too, is a measure of the regional tensions. We'll have the Defense Minister of Israel, the Foreign Minister of Saudi Arabia, and the Foreign Minister of Turkey. But we're going to begin with a man who has been the Defense Minister of the State of Israel since the last year. He has been a member of the Israeli Parliament, the Knesset, since 1999. And he has held almost every senior position in the government of the State of Israel. But he's the founder of an Israeli political party, Yisrael Beitenu. They call him the Kingmaker. What will he make of war or peace in the Middle East? Ladies and gentlemen, Avigdor Lieberman.
Thank you very much. Good morning. To speak frankly, I don't have any speech, but only some remarks. And I will start maybe from the first remark. There is one very famous former American commander, and he explains that in the Middle East, we are facing three challenges: Iran, Iran, and Iran. And I can only to repeat and to confirm this approach. First of all, the first challenge, of course, it's the Iranian nuclear ambitions and ballistic missiles program and the smuggling of weapons, very sophisticated weapons, to every problematic place in the Middle East, and their new desire to manufacture guided missiles in every problematic place. It doesn't matter if it's Yemen or Lebanon or Syria. The second challenge It's, of course, their efforts to undermine stability in every country in the Middle East. We can start with Bahrain, from Bahrain to Yemen, from Yemen to Lebanon, from Lebanon to Syria. And I think that, of course, their main destination, it's at the end of the day, it's Saudi Arabia. And I will be happy to hear my colleague or Minister of Foreign Affairs of Saudi Arabia. And of course, the third problem, it's their pattern of behavior to create proxy in every place. In Lebanon, we have Hezbollah. In Gaza Strip, we have Islamic Jihad and Hamas. We have the Houthi militias. In Yemen, we have Shia militias. In Iraq, etc., etc. And of course, all of them, all of this activity under umbrella of the biggest and most powerful and brutal and sophisticated terror organization in the world, the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, under control of the terrorist number one in the world, Qasem Soleimani. But regardless Israel, if I try to understand what happened, what we have seen since the signing nuclear deal between the P5+1 and Iran. First of all, it's a competition organized in Tehran for the best Holocaust denial cartoon with a first prize of $50,000. We saw a parade in the center of Tehran showing of ballistic missiles with a Hebrew inscription that said, Israel must be wiped out. We saw a State Department report in the last August on global terrorism, which clearly stated that Iran is a top state sponsor of terror in the world. Just a few days ago, we saw a wild mob in downtown Tehran crying out, death to America and death to Israel, and burning US and Israeli flags. Iran is developing ballistic missiles contrary to UN Security Council Resolution 2231 and has strong cooperation with North Korea. As a matter of official policy, Iran persecutes its ethnic and religious minorities and jails journalists, students, activists, and civil society figures. Close to 600 people were executed by the regime in 2016, in this year, with little or no due legal process, the highest execution rate in the world. And it's, of course, it's a clear picture, and maybe the new in the Middle East, if you ask me what is the biggest news in the Middle East, I think that the first time since 48 that moderate Arab world, Sunni world, they understand that the biggest threat for them, it's not Israel, not Jews, and not Zionism, but Iran and Iranian proxy. And it's also opportunity. We open for regional dialogue, not dialogue as Mr. Zarif mentioned, but completely different dialogue. And I think that the ball on their court today. But it's clear that real division today in the Middle East, it's not Jews, not Muslims, not Christians, but moderate people against radical people, or radical people against moderate people. And my vision, our vision today, to create this coalition of all moderate people in the Middle East to overcome this radical tendency, radical people, terrorist organizations, and I hope that at the end of the day we will succeed. Thank you.
So, Minister Liberman, you have started by telling us, as we understand, you told Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense Mattis, when you met him, that the problem as you see it in the region is Iran, Iran, Iran. What are you calling for? Is it sanctions, as we heard in the last session, or are you looking at military pressure? What is on the table?
I think it's open, yeah. It's a combination of economic pressure, it's a very tough policy, and of course to impose all decisions, all resolutions of Security Council. For example, the ballistic missiles, all their program with ballistic missiles. It's clear that today we suffered in the last period from the lack of political will and determination. And we discussed many times about soft power. I think that the results of soft power we see today in the Middle East. It's not only regarding Iran.
But the former U.S. administration, Secretary of State Kerry, Wendy Sherman is here, dealt with one of the big problems in the region, the Iran nuclear program, through negotiations. Javad Zarif started our morning calling for dialogue. Is there no option to try to discuss a way out of this crisis?
I think it was an attempt to avoid reality. We have clear results of very similar deal with North Korea. And
some actually say there should be a deal with
North
North Korea.
The Iranian deal, it's copy-paste what we had with North Korea. And we see what the results in North Korea. And no doubts, if you ask every people, every man, every woman in the Middle East, everybody understands that Iran will be another example of North Korean deal.
Now, what we understand Iran wants, we heard it from Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu when he went to the White House. He's talking about a broader coalition which involves Israel and Arab states. But when you talk to Arab states, they say, we cannot work with Israel on this until you solve what is still the core issue for them, which is the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We heard from President Trump, one state, two state, whatever the parties like. What do you like?
I can speak about my position. And maybe, it will be a very long explanation.
Well, I think we all know the history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict.
Because Palestinian conflict, it's very interesting. Today we have, and I completely agree with some colleagues, very bad right-wing, tough right-wing government. The question, what happened with all previous governments? We had very dovish governments. We had Ehud Olmert, and I see here Tzipi Livni, and we had Ehud Barak and Ariel Sharon, and Tzipi Livni, she met with Abu Mazen in Annapolis, and everything was, ready for the huge ceremony in White House. At the last moment, Mahmoud Abbas refused to sign a final status agreement.
But let's
Okay.
Let's go to 2017 February.
And,
what is on your agenda now?
It was the same with Arafat in Ehud Barak in Camp David, etc., etc. My vision, it's the end game, no doubt, two-state solution. I believe that what is necessary for us to keep the Jewish state. And I think also regarding the Jewish state and Palestinian state, there is a huge misunderstanding. My biggest problem is that today on the table we have a proposal. We will establish very homogenic Palestinian state without even one Jew, and we will become binational state with more than 20% of population the Palestinians. I think that the basic principle of solution must include exchange of land and population. It doesn't make sense to create one homogenic Palestinian state and binational state Israel. It's one problem. And of course, the other problem, Palestinians, they don't have capacity to sign alone a final status agreement with Israel. It's possible only as a part of all regional solution. Not the incremental process, but simultaneously. We must sign simultaneously on the regional solution with Arab world and Palestinians.
So you like this idea of going back to the original proposal put forward by Saudi Arabia many years ago, which never got off the ground, a broader Arab-Israeli.
I speak many times about this vision, part of course, Arab League initiative, Saudi Arabia initiative. There are some positive paragraphs. There are paragraphs that they completely unacceptable for us, like issue of refugees, etc. But today, at least, there is understanding that the biggest problem of the Middle East, it's not a Palestinian issue. With all due respect to our dispute with the Palestinians.
But it still is an issue to resolve, and you would agree? Yes.
I think it's an issue, but it's, in the past it was very easy to explain all problems of the Arab world because we have Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Today it's clear that there are no ties between, uprising in Tunisia or civilian war in Syria or Libya and the Israeli-Palestinian dispute. I think the opposite, with all problems, we keep situation with the Palestinians under control. It doesn't look like in Syria or in Libya or in Yemen.
Well, as President Obama used to say, the status quo is not sustainable, but it is a new administration. Just to give us a sense of what all of you are thinking, since President Trump has said, let's choose a solution, of course, with Israelis and Palestinians, right? But what does the international community want? How many here in this room still believe that a two-state solution is the best way forward to resolve the Israeli-Palestinian conflict? And see, believe these hands way up. Well, Minister Lieberman, they agree with you, a two-state solution. I'm sorry we have to end it, but thank you very much.
The problem is that they don't vote in Israel.
No, I don't think. I think we've gone beyond that, certainly at the Munich Security Forum. Okay. Minister Lieberman, we're very grateful to have you. Thank you very much for your intervention. Thank you very much. Join me, please, in